All right, we are going to start off with our new tradition.
I'm
As
so worried about this.
aren't you always worried about this? Just as
I am.
people come in.
I have a feeling I know what's going to happen.
That's right. Okay, let's see. This is a good one. You guys hear it?
Yo, yo, Mitch come the sticks. Straight from googling with your shit, how become switch. Steps now won't even rest. And as soon as the sax be fucking tracks like this. Spit left. The trot, just the bitching and breath, yo. Step to the kiln, we spit in thermodynamics. Under fired clay, that's ceramic. Sodom kid pours like a sponge, mutant the flavor, it's tragic. Tea turns to fog, where's the aroma with magic stacks? This shit got grit, but fired weak, that's blasphemy. Rough surface texture and polyphenol casualty. Iron oxide's a sniper, catalyzing the clash. Catching your catechins, turning them to ash. Under fired, now we ain't biased. Flavors muted, like a liar's pyre. Fully fired, king of the flames. T sings loud, no mute in its name. Yo, I'm the killing commander, thermodynamic scholar. Low vitrification, that's a porous dollar. Adsorption's the game, not absorption. See, molecules sticking like glue to Fe2O3. Lewis acid traps, quino's getting flipped. Astringency's a heavy weight, now your tongue's equipped. Black vomit teapots, that's the underbaked curse. Fully fires the surgeon, precision, no worse. Yo, centering weak, surface tension's a joke. Rougher than sandpaper, brews going broke. The yarrow begins polymerized, tannins choke. Mature plays the antidote, flavors woke. Shell pots got jokes, call them mutant the clutch. But real Zisha's a magnum, flavors a crutch. Gone full brew, 30 seconds. All hideous math, 180 XP, chemistry's wrath. Front tongue astringent, that's dimerization. Oxide selected, red versus black oxidation. We the gong food jewels of the clay elevation. Fully fires the truth, no mutation, all revelation. Under fire's a trap, teapot's tragic epilogue. Flavors in a coffin,
I think we're good.
digging no long.
All right.
So that's our new tradition. I think this is the third or fourth AMA where you've had some music for us to open up.
I have. And with that, we can start. We're so excited that people have joined us, and we're so excited for all the questions that we got. And most of all, I think we're excited for this trip. It's less than a week away now.
Yeah, I think Zongjun, before you had joined, before we started, I was just telling Jason, went out and got all my vaccines updated, did all my shopping. I'm at the point where I'm just like, just put me in the airplane. I just want to go. Let's get to Yunnan. I think
Let's go.
In the tradition of our AMAs, we always ask what everyone's drinking to start. And Jason, I already see you took a big swig. So you want to let us know what you're drinking?
I am drinking a really nice Cohen Kung Chidan. There's a little bit of sparkle to it, so it doesn't make an age claim. So I'm going to guess that it's not quite Wee Gushu, so maybe 20, 30-year-old tree. Really good, very caramely, leaves like a bit of clove oil essence on your tongue. And I thought, what better to pair that with at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday than some Glenfarclas Japanese export 21-year cask strength.
Casual. Very casual. That Huiyun Kwang Chidan, is that from our friend whose bar we all went to, or is this a different source?
Yes. Testing out a range of our new friends' teas.
Nice. Okay. Excited to hear more. Zongjun, you have something at hand that you're drinking tonight?
It's a big bottle of Nongfushan.
Just enjoying the taste of Nongfushan, which we'll be drinking nonstop in the next few weeks.
Was that just the 9
No
a.m.
tea,
special Zongjun, or did
no
you
alcohol,
bottle with
nothing.
Baijiu?
Just priming my palate to absolute neutral, ready for this trip.
Nothing else will go in your body.
Yep, just shui.
It's a long fast, Zongjun. We're not going to be there for another week. Okay, well, I have a little mug here of some chunpi and some pu'er because, as I mentioned, I got my vaccines updated a little bit earlier today. Just feel like I got my butt kicked a little bit by them, so I needed something to comfort me and hold me tight and let me know everything's going to be okay after all of my shots. I think with that, we're going to jump into the questions that were pre-submitted. Just let everyone know who's joining online as well. Feel free to drop questions in the chat and we'll answer them live. So we did get a question from a friend of the podcast. and I'm going to read it now. Jason, I think this one is specifically to you. This comes from our friend Anthony C. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
One horse-sized duck. I think the 100 could come at me from multiple angles, but having just a single opponent, I think I stand a better chance.
Mallards are pretty vicious. I don't know. A mallard the size of a horse. I'm kind of scared of that. Zongjun, do you have a different take?
Kind of a Yunnan mushroom of your dream.
It's a very serious question submitted by a listener.
I'll take whatever is coming to us for Gurman. Anything.
Zongjun thinks as a team, earth, wind, water, fire, if we can take the 100 ducks.
All right. We're missing Emily, so one of the elements is down, so I'm not sure that we're going to be able to like power up Captain Planet this and take out the ducks. Yeah.
I will say I was shocked by how big a goose was. I was walking around some market in Taiwan, and there was a goose, full-size goose in a cage. Goose was like as tall as I was. That goose was huge.
That's that gooshu goose.
Yeah, that stopped me in my tracks. I had to do a double take. And then, of course, the nice gentleman with the goose stall was just like, ugh. Like I needed an explanation of what this goose was.
I don't know. Foreigners have never seen a goose before. This
I've
is a
never-
special Taiwanese goose. They don't have this in other places.
I've never seen a goose that big before. That was a really big goose.
Almost horse-sized, would you say?
I don't think I could have fought it. I think
Okay.
I would have lost.
Well, it sounds like you picked a losing battle then. I do think I'm on the same team as you, though. I think I'd go for the one.
I just want to be
duck.
clear. The horse-sized duck picked a fight with me.
I mean, this Anthony asking this question is picking a fight with all of us. He did submit that question. That was a real question that we got. So another question submitted by a reader. This is actually a two-parter. So the question was, what are the endemic brewing practices of Yunnan? They had a follow-up question, what are the historic brewing practices of Yunnan? So these may be the same thing, or maybe there's a slightly different answer.
I would say the endemic brewing practices and the historic brewing practices are both best described as splashy fun time. There's a lot of big plate brewing. There's a lot of tree stump tea table brewing. That said, the brewing is quite skillful. It might be splashy fun time, and it might not be particularly overbearingly elegant as you would see in tea houses in Shanghai or Taipei. But they're using medium-sized updose and tea to water ratio, anywhere 5, 6, 7 grams of tea, and packing that into 120 mil, 150 mil gaiwan, and doing relatively rapid brews. One thing that we do see a lot of is mixed daobei brewing, where they're not particularly concerned with adding multiple brews into the same gong daobei. And that's a very tea taster, farmer, merchant thing that you'll see in Yunnan. The idea is that good tea, the flavor profile will be pretty stable across those multiple brews. And they're doing a little bit higher of an updose, a little bit longer of a standard brew time than you see in more type of refined multi-brew sessions. But the important thing to know is that before late 90s, really, before late 90s, it would have been all Laoren cha. It would have been thermos brewing, large cup brewing. And it wasn't until the Taiwanese came back to Yunnan in the 90s that they began to brew in a way that was more presentable for individuals actually visiting. I don't know if you want to expound on that or talk more about that, Zongjun.
Yeah, and just to expand from the points that Jason made, they didn't drink pu'er. They were historically been drinking green tea and sometimes red tea. All of the pu'er teas that they made historically being exported to other provinces end up staying in those provinces, and they never drink their own produce. Until very recently, of course.
Very recently. And rare productions, occasional productions of things like dianhongs, certain red teas, white teas. But really, when they say white tea in Yunnan, they mean like unprocessed, sun-dried maocha, very low intervention type production. So this idea of individuals drinking pu'er tea in Yunnan, it was predominantly an export product. And we should also make a strong differentiation between the indigenous ethnicities of Yunnan versus the historical Han migration. There's been Han for 300-400 plus years at this point, but the practices of the Han were much more sinified than some of the Bai and Dai various minority groups that continue to have their own practices of boiled tea and other types of tea that they make.
Awesome. Okay. I
That's
think
a
we
good
answered that one. Great question. Thank you to our reader. And hopefully they feel like you answered it. think you did a
Well,
nice job.
Pat, before you jump into that next question, maybe you should give a little bit of background because all three of us have different levels of experience in Yunnan.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably going to be touched upon in some of our other questions here. We do have a couple questions that kind of touch on the same theme. So a lot of the themes are around, like, for you and Zongjun, you've both been to Yunnan before. So there's this theme in the questions of what are your expectations? So what are you guys expecting to see that maybe you've already seen before? What do you think is going to be different about this trip? And then I'll add my own color here. I've never been to Yunnan before. I've only heard about it secondhand, seen pictures, seen videos. And so for me, my expectations are set like super high. I think it's good that we had Wu Yi last year to like, I don't know, temper me a little bit, because if Wu Yi like exceeded Zhao and then I was just like continuing this upward trajectory of amazing tea trips, I don't know if I could like actually fathom what Yunnan was going to be like, because my excitement would be way too high. So I think I got tempered by last year's experience a little bit. Still a good time, but it was more type 2 fun. I think this year will be a little bit more type 1 fun and type 2 fun. But, you know, expecting that we're going to spend a lot of time with farmers, of course, expecting we're going to drink a ton of tea. I do think that my preconceived notions of some of the flavor profiles, particularly in this area, because we're going to be pretty heavily in Yiwu and in some small, I'm thinking we're going to be going to some small villages and small mountain areas. I think a lot of what I believe this tea tastes like is going to be challenged, and I hope it is. And then I'll be excited to see where maybe my previous knowledge holds true. I do think this trip is going to be more difficult than the previous trips that we've had. Yunnan just feels like a little more backcountry. I was just telling Jason before we started recording how much shopping I've been doing. And Jason gets a text from me every 3 or 4 days when I'm like thinking about going to REI. And I'm like, hey, do we have clean drinking water in Yunnan? Hey, do I need bug spray? I think expectations are high. Slowly getting myself mentally and physically prepared for the trip. I think whatever I expect, I hope that this trip will exceed it. So I'll pass it back to you and Zongjun, Jason, with your part 2 or part 3 or part 4 Yunnan experience.
Well, I'll let Zongjun go first, but I will say I wish they had snake spray.
Oh, great, cool.
It's going back to Yunnan again, Jason. I don't know. This time is going to be very different from Wu. I would say it will be probably more similar to Chaozhou because we're going back closer to the tea harvest and tea processing season. So expecting the whole mountain smell like tea. And really wanted to see those people carrying giant basket of fresh tea leaves walking along the mountain routes into the villages. That was quite a scene from a lot of national photography competition. And really wanted to see that because Yiwu was famous historically for being a tea trading center in the region. Don't know if that's still a practice, but I'll be very happy to see that.
It is. And Zongjun, just for listeners to have context, this will be your second time in Yiwu in the Tea Mountains, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What surprised you most the first time? I've been a couple of times going all the way back to 2007. So what surprised you since your first time was just 2 years ago on an extension of the 2023 research trip?
What surprised me, how developed Yunnan is right now. Because before the trip, Jason was really priming me how we need to be ready into venturing to the jungles. And we didn't get to venture into the jungles until probably like 10 miles away from Yiwu town. And we're still on this like 4-lane highway. Yes, we're pretty close to civilization. But once we are in Yiwu, it's quite a different world. You are surrounded by nature. You are surrounded by flying mountain chickens and all kinds of vegetations and tea in all of the hidden places. So very harmonical between nature and tea. It's like very different from all the other tea gardens that we have visited. Like it's not a tea garden, it's a forest.
The tea forest. Yeah. Well, I will, in my defense, Zongjun, what year was that highway built?
Good question. I don't know. It's like 2 years, 3 years ago, maybe.
It wasn't finished. We were on it in 2023. The highway wasn't finished. It finished this year.
Oh, yeah. It looks brand new. That was a new highway.
It is brand new.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's true. When I was in Yunnan the first time in 2007, it was not developed. It was truly, it was going into another world. And now that other world is in many ways disappearing. They finished the highway this year. I got some notes from a friend who said that you were just here 2 years ago. When you show up this year, you're not going to recognize the place. A welcome center has been built at the end of the highway. There's a big viewing pavilion to go out and look at a tea mountain. It's developing. And in some ways, these things are good. It's good that there's running water and electricity and clean water and some infrastructure. It's good that it doesn't take more than a day's drive to get from the villages into an actual town with schools and hospitals. But on the other hand, the highway destroyed lots of old grove tea. It destroyed lots of tea forest. A lot of the families used to harvest that aren't even harvesting the tea that was untouched next to the highway. They say it's no good. They say that it's too hot for electric cars. So even though China's so rapidly electrifying, that the electric cars aren't used in that mountain, because in the summertime, the flat top could be over 100 degrees and the batteries would then be at like 120 something degrees. And yeah, it's a big deal that the highway is there. And we saw it in Wudong, not even to talk about Wui, but right in Wudong, people driving their Audis up into the Wudong mountain. And then it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours of just sitting in bumper to bumper traffic, your Audi next to someone's Bentley, to go bid against each other on the 300-year-old.
And I don't know if anything will be as bad as Hangzhou, though. I've never sat in more traffic next to tons of nice cars than I did in Hangzhou.
Yeah, this is why we're not writing.
We have heard rumors of Yiwu being a helicopter heavy town, so expecting to see some incoming choppers.
But Zongjun, so that's interesting that you talked about that development. But then culturally, Yunnan is still quite distinct, right? Despite the development, the culture has not been degraded. The culture is still there, right? I would say this time I interacted a lot more. This was when we were on the Jingmai side. I interacted a lot more with the specific minority group that we were there. That was the Bulang minority group that I hadn't spent a whole lot of time with before. And I would say that culture is incredibly strong, and it's notably different in numerous ways. I don't know, Zongjun, being your first time in Yunnan and 2 years ago, did you find anything surprising on that side? Living in China full-time, mostly full-time, right? What did you find surprising? I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, my ethnicity background is Han, and China is really a Han country. 90% of the people living here are like me, and Yunnan is quite the opposite. Han is the minority in that province, and you see all these ethnicities, different people coming from all parts of China, actually, living there, staying with the locals, practicing their own culture. It's quite a interesting theme to watch. Almost remind me a little bit of India, how different people with ethnical background, not only having different culture maybe, but also speaking different languages and eating different food and doing things differently. That's very interesting to see. You almost cannot believe you're still in China. And that part being well preserved, you do have all these people respecting each other and being very hospitable to visitors and really wanted to show us their way of life and what they think are interesting and beautiful. So we had a really wonderful time in Jingmai and all the other tea-producing regions in Yunnan that we ended up visiting.
Awesome. Do you both feel like you've touched upon the expectations question
No.
that we were originally answering?
I was going to revert. I was going to ask, can you remind me what questions I was answering? My expectation. This will be my fifth time in Yunnan, fifth time going to the tea mountains. But I really had to rebuild. When we went in 2023, the whole point was to start to rebuild these relationships so that we could go back, because my relationships had atrophied since I was there in 2007, 2009. So we went back in 2023 to start building and rebuilding these relationships. And this was after we were in Chaozhou and Wudong doing the 2023 research trip on Damsong tea. But Zongjun and I continued on, and we went to Jingmai, and we had a pretty amazing time in Jingmai. We did a bit of work in Menghai. We saw some pu'er production. Then we went to Yiwu to see the birthplace of not just pu'er tea, but in some theories, all tea. And I think what's changed for me since I started, it was pu'er tea that got me into tea, right? It was pu'er tea that got me started in tea. And I always felt like I could purchase and taste and understand it. It was really the entryway for me. But I think what's changed in my practice and my level of understanding is the nuance and the complexities and this idea of traditions and living traditions. And there's a little bit of this knee-jerk reaction that a lot of people who are new to tea have about how old is pu'er? When did, pu'er is this ancient tea. We taught in the Institute back in Penn State that, well, really there's no, what we think of as pu'er tea pre-1900-ish, right? Songpinhao and Tongqinghao and the antique era. All of this developed and redeveloped much later than a lot of people think, despite these trees, the tea forests, having been tended to since easily Tang Dynasty, a lot of historical information pointing back even further and used as tea. And so this idea of traditions and living arts, what is it that we're studying and what makes it meaningful has really changed for me in that time. I would say that my focus on terroir really at a different level, right? It's not just Yiwu, it's Yiwu as a range of mountains, and each mountain tastes quite different, and being able to say, okay, well, this tastes like mahe, but actually this tastes like really good upslope mahe. So it's Shuimen Kun, and this tastes really sweet and honey and floral, so probably Gaoshan, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that the thing that I'm looking forward to most is getting much further afield, is getting out of the villages where I spent most of the time and getting a day, 2 days, 3 days maybe, deep into the forest covered in leeches, fighting off snakes, protecting Pat from spiders, and seeing these ancient trees that are far more off the beaten path, and just really getting an understanding of the forest and the forest maintenance and the practices and the variations and practices there. Do they let the moss stay on the tree? Do they weed the garden? Do they leave the garden? How tightly dense are the tea groves? Are the tea groves equilaterally spaced, which points to ancient arbor, versus are they totally wild? Have they been pollarded? Who's doing the picking? Is it one of the itinerant minority groups, or is it specific individuals who are allowed to tend and pick from specific trees and groves? Anyway, that was a really long answer, but that's what I'm hoping to get into this time.
I don't think anyone who listens to our podcast expects short answers from you, but I think you did start to touch upon a question that Alex, who's joining us here, dropped in the chat. For all of you listening later on, joining the AMA Live, it's the best way to have your questions answered. We have a backlog of questions from Instagram, but you get to skip that if you're here and you drop it in the chat. So thank you, Alex, for dropping a question in the chat. So Jason, you were talking about where we're going to be going, where you've gone before in Yunnan. So why did we choose Yiwu this time versus anywhere else in Yunnan? And how do you see our itinerary looking? I think you started to touch upon this based on the relationship building, right? And everything you said, but go ahead and answer it deeper.
All of these trips, we focus on a single area, and we try to make the area as tight as possible in order to learn as much as possible. And so Yunnan is huge. And, I think that there's a good question if you could even cover Yunnan, or even cover all of pu'er tea in a single book. You could write your own book just about Yiwu. But any research on pu'er probably has to start in Yiwu. Yiwu was the historical trading center for the forest tea. It has one of the longest running traditions of continuous harvesting from the 6 famous tea mountains. It is where, fairly or unfairly, the majority of focus has been. And even to the point you could say that something that's outside of that traditional area, like Laobanjiang, was almost in response to this overfocus on Yiwu. So we're going to Yiwu again, because that's definitely the place to start. And it's the best place to see the ancient tea trees, the processing, and to really gain an understanding of what every other area measures itself against. You go anywhere else, they'll say this is as good as, or this replicates, or this is similar to, always in reference to something in Yiwu.
Maybe Zongjun, you can build as well. When you guys visited 2 years ago, you obviously built relationships in that area. And so that's kind of why we're going back. Yep. What would it look like if we were going to try to go to a different area, right? Like we can't just show up, right? What does that look like in your mind?
Really, I don't know. One of the very memorable moments from last trip was one of our tea friends took us into a slope behind Mahe. It was Jason and I and him, and we were standing in the tea forest in Mahe, and he was pointing to all sides of the mountains surrounding Yiwu. because Yiwu was basically the trading center and everyone needs to come to Yiwu historically to sell their teas. And he was like, okay, so behind that mountain ridge is Wangong, and over there is Bogatan, and you have Chawangshu all the way up at the slope. And as he was pointing his finger into the distance, I see just like a sea of green forest. I had no idea what's in there. Do people actually live in those places? I had to question myself, but it would be super cool to actually put my feet into those unexplored area and actually be able to see what's going on the ground. So that's super excited.
I think it's Yiwu for now, and it could be that we love it so much and we learn so much that it's Yiwu again another time. But certainly there will come a time where we try to set up more relationships, I think, outside of Yiwu. And these trips are always much more impactful when we have the relationships and we're able to meet with the right people, get the right access to things, and really learn at a deeper level. Because if we just show up in another tea village, we're not going to get a lot done. But luckily, we have a couple people this time who are going to host us, and I'm really excited about what we're going to see with them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the question. All right, Jason, I know you got a couple questions that were submitted via email. Did you want to pop into those?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Let's see. Main goal for the trip. How do these trips enhance or add or allow for the research of the writing? You can take that one, Pat. You've been hosting.
Sure. Yeah, the writing. Well, main goals, I think, outside of doing background research to continue writing and to eventually write a book, which I think you kind of alluded to a little bit, Jason. Maybe a pu'er book, maybe multiple pu'er books, maybe a Yiwu book, who knows? Outside of
one book,
sure.
Just one
sure.
book, few thousand
One book.
pages. That's all.
2,000 pages.
Okay, so after we write the pu'er table reference text guide textbook, outside of that, well, it's not really outside of that. Everything we do, I think, is in service of what we hope to put into the books, right? So I think it's all about gathering this firsthand experience, really seeing these practices in person. Beyond that, forming relationships. So I think tea is this amazing hobby. It's this amazing culture. But, when it really boils down to it, it's really an avenue of connection. And I feel like one of the things that we get out of this is that these trips provide us with lots of friendships, right? And often these friendships net other benefits for us in the future and for other trips. We've had some of our relationships help set us up with other people on different research trips or help connect us with people so that we can find out different answers to questions we have. A lot of stuff that we're doing is not things that you can just go search on the internet and get an answer. And sometimes it's things that, even in English or in Mandarin with access to great books from amazing libraries, we still can't find the answer, right? We're going to be getting a lot of, I think, amazing firsthand experience. And that's really what I think this is going to be setting us up for. And that's the goal of this trip in my mind. But man, beyond that, a lot of fun. My goal is also just to have a great time with you guys. There's always tough parts, but for the most part, it's just a great time together.
It's definitely type B fun. So it's not always fun immediately in the moment, particularly when it's 100 degrees, 100% humidity. You've been walking for hours. There's certainly some pain and suffering that goes onto it. But I would say, and I've come back to this a few times, is that one of the most important things and the reason that people trust us and make friends with us and are willing to reveal so much to us is because we're non-commercial. Is because we are so intensely academic and we don't sell tea. We don't sell teaware. We're never going to sell tea. We're never going to sell teaware. All we want to do is write these books, make sure they're factually correct, and publish great information in English. And I think that goes a long way. And Zongjun, you could talk about this. You easily have access to other tea circles in China, but there are very few groups, maybe nearly no groups that have the type of relationship that we do because there's so little of this general public knowledge publication that's not trying to promote or sell or do anything other than advance the pure knowledge of these topics.
Yeah, tea is always tied with money in China, and pu'er especially so. I guess my first exposure to pu'er when I was a kid was the pu'er bubble back in the days. And that was, I think, still haunted a lot of people to these days, that they don't want to touch pu'er because it feels too deep water, that they might drown along with their wallet. So It's something that's people do not really be able to view it with a very pure lens. You kind of see that in some of the academic publications, and some of the scholars that we have talked to take a similar approach to study tea. But usually in China, when you're talking about tea, when you are trying to quote unquote educate people about tea, you're trying to sell them something, usually with a higher price tag than normal. And usually we call it intelligence tax that you have paid as a consumer. It's a slang in China. But it's not very common to see people just showed up and just wanted to learn tea. I think we surprised a handful of farmers in Yunnan too, because sometimes at the end they were saying like, okay, so how much tea do you want? And we can start talking about the price tag or wholesale prices. And we're like, oh no, we don't intend to buy anything from you other than gaining knowledge. So.
Sometimes we do have to buy things.
We'll take a little bit on the side, but we're not doing wholesale.
For our own consumption.
Yeah, but that's one of the magic moments, right? Because when we do that and they realize that we're serious, right? Then they start to go back and to revise and to add nuance and to really
they really open up after that.
It really changes. It really changes a lot for us. And it's what gets us invited back. And they say, come with me next time. Let me show you. Let me actually show you what I'm doing.
I feel like we touched on that then, the goal. Feel satisfied with that? We continue to just get down rabbit holes on every question that I think we answer. This one I didn't expect. This one came to us on Instagram. What makes you nervous about this trip?
What makes me nervous about this trip?
Laotian beer.
Oh yeah, Laotian beer. Don't drink that stuff.
It's got to be cleaner than the Yunnan water.
No, it's propylene glycol to stabilize it, and it gives you a pounding headache.
So we'll be chugging a few of those every night. I think we're going to have much better luck with tea on this trip than our last trip, but much worse luck with beer. Because we had some pretty decent beer in Wuyi.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've never had worse food in China than in Yiwu village.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited for that.
Maybe it's like the only place I've been in China and just been like, maybe I'll starve. I will say the local
home cookings were nice.
It's okay. We asked people even who live there, and we're like, where do you eat in this village? And they're like, home. Stay home. Yeah. I will say the local moldy tofu is, just think of it like blue cheese. It's all right.
Tastes like blue cheese.
It does actually taste like blue cheese. It's very disconcerting to eat something that tastes like blue cheese in China, but the moldy tofu looks and tastes like blue cheese.
Pretty good, actually.
So ready for severe intestinal distress.
That's a home thing. Actually, we felt fine on that. We felt worse with the unidentified shap cow.
In Wuyi.
In Yunnan as well.
Oh, you doubled down on that? Well, I guess this is the previous trip, but
This
yeah.
was the previous trip, but yeah, it was probably like mountain shrew or something. It wasn't.
How did the flavor profile compare against the field rat that we ate in Wuyi?
Much more nutty.
Oh, okay. I wonder what its diet was.
Acorns, pure acorn diet.
So, Jason, is what you're nervous about the food in Yiwu then? Or what are you nervous about?
What am I nervous about? When Zongjun and I were there, we crossed paths with a very poisonous snake. That was just the one that we saw. I've previously had leeches on me in Yunnan. Ticks are indigenous. Malaria. One of you guys should probably grab like a malaria Malarone prescription or something.
I thought that China had eradicated malaria.
Mostly. I mean, it flies over from Laos from time to time.
Okay. I did go to a travel clinic today, and they told me that I'll probably be fine on malaria.
Yeah, I love that. You'll probably be fine. Where are you going again?
Oh, China? I was like, well, southwestern China. I was like, by the border of Laos, but okay.
Yeah. If Japanese encephalitis can get you, malaria could definitely get you. Yeah, I would say, if anything, I'm most nervous of us being waylaid. Less so by food poisoning. I think food, we're going to be eating with families and stuff, and we're not going to do the late night Xiao Kao and Laotian beer. We've learned our lesson.
Not even once.
Even one Zongjun. Not even one.
Sure.
Come on, Pad. I know
Let's go. Jason got destroyed on Mao Chow. Let's go eat some questionable food.
Yeah, I'm most worried about the wildlife.
Zongjun?
Me most worried about.
What makes you nervous about this trip?
Not seeing enough, I would say. Yunnan people are not famous for being well planners, and we frequently got invited to things like very last minute, or even like in the middle of something, they grab us to a different place. That's both like hopes of serendipity and also hopes of missing something. I guess we're going back to Yunnan again in the future, but just the whole FOMO kind of sketch me out a little bit.
I agree with that. I also hope that our presence isn't too disruptive during harvest, right?
Yeah.
If we rocked up and attempted to buy top quality Gushu Maocha, the price would obviously like triple if they would even bother to sell it to us. So we're going to be with some contacts who are likely going to be trying to do that. And I hope they don't say, you wait here and then wander into the forest to go negotiate without us. I hope that we're not disruptive in a negative way to the process and that we get to see it and that we're treated as non-negative influences on operations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. We're trying to see and learn as much as we can, but obviously this is an extremely busy time of year for these farmers and all of our contacts. So definitely trying to get as much as we can without being in the way. I think for me to touch on this question, it's kind of what you touched on in the beginning, Jason. I'm not really afraid of leeches, but spiders and snakes definitely doesn't sound so fun. Snakes themselves don't bother me, but knowing that there's highly poisonous snakes, yeah, let's have our eyes out.
I got one. What are misconceptions about Yunnan pu'er that we've encountered, and then what do we hope to debunk while we're there? I have a mean one, but I'll let you guys go first.
Let me let Zongjun take it.
Misconception about pu'er and what we hope to debunk on this trip. It's a
I'll-
hard
I'll-
question.
I got
Just
a mean
be
one.
able-
Yeah. You ain't got Gushu. That tree ain't 400 years old. You're not drinking 1,000-year king of tree, Chiaomu.
So your whole goal is just we roll in and we pollard the trees, we take the rings, we do straight up tea tree aging where like these trees are 50 years old. What are you talking about? This ain't Gushu.
Yeah. I'm half joking, facetious, right? But a lot of things that get claimed as old Gushu and sold, particularly in less scrupulous, Western-facing tea merchants, not calling anyone out specifically, but there's a lot of wild claims there. And part of the problem is that some of the merchants themselves believe these claims. They're going out into the fields and they're talking to farmers or people who have access to the land, and they're saying, oh, right, Gushu, Gushu, Gushu. We heard this in Wudong. People say the trees age at 10 years per year. So you come back 3 years, 5 years later, and the tea is 50 years older. The tree is 50 years older than it was. It went from 200 years to 250 years. But you're getting that at a much larger level, I think, in Yunnan. And people are doing a poor job of training themselves to know what Gushu tastes like. And that's something that I hope that we can help set the record straight.
I guess for me, it's to gain more experience and really be able to tell the difference between different regions. Because Yiwu is almost a big basket. People can throw just whatever tea into this place and under this name and gets laundried, and all of a sudden it's Yiwu tea. You don't really be able to trace where exactly is this tea being grown and being produced from, because there are so many segmented terroir under this whole region. So be able to really gain the experience and be able to tell exactly if this tea is in fact actually from Yiwu region, I think will be very helpful.
I think that pretty closely aligns with my thoughts. We've had great teachers who have given us good samples to try and train our palates on what is the taste of a certain region, a certain village, a certain mountain. But I think being in a place and being able to actually see the tea being processed and then tasting like the Maocha then and there, that's going to be the thing that either debunks or affirms my knowledge on every specific area and mountain. And I'm so excited for that. So I really want to see like how true a lot of the things that I believe about specific flavors or profiles of an area hold to be. So that's going to be amazing.
That touches on one of the in-chat questions, one of the live questions we got, which is, do the regions you choose also align with regions that we tend to reach for in our drinking? Do we gravitate to Yiwu as a tea drinker? And I think that's a really difficult question to answer because, as Zongjun said, Yiwu is not one mountain's, right? People will make generalities and say Jingmai is bitter and has a high astringency and takes a long time to age, and Menghai is for pu'er and Ibang and Banjang are all camphor and woody, and Yiwu is all light and floral, right? But like within Yiwu, if we talk to anyone within Yiwu, no one says Yiwu tea unless they're talking about Yiwu village surrounding. Or they're talking about Gaoshan tea and Mahe tea and Walong tea. No one says this is the flavor of Yiwu. The area is too big, right? The tea is too diverse. Wafengjai tastes nothing like Gaoshan. So I think that this idea of is there a flavor of Yiwu? It's like, I don't know, is there a flavor of Jura wine? Is there a flavor of Highland Scotch? Yeah, kind of. But, each individual area has so much of its own profile. And so I would say that even now, 20 years of drinking pu'er, can I identify specific Yiwu subregions? Only if I've had great references that I trust. I think at this point I can do Mahe, because one of our contacts specializes in Mahe and its subregions, including, I think I can do Bohatong, I think I can do Wengong, I think I can do Gaoshan, but others, I don't know.
Need more data points.
Yeah, there's a pretty amazing tea meme that's floating around Instagram, which is like Superman walking into a room, and it's like that look or that feel that I have when I walk into work, and I know I'm the only one who can identify single mountain Gushu pu'er tea. I love those memes. There's a few of them that have been coming out, and I'm just like, you know what? This might be true for me coming up pretty soon. Let's see.
Can't believe you haven't sent those to me, Pat.
I'll send them to you right after this. They are really good. They make me laugh so hard when I see them. There's a few. Okay. I think we definitely touched on that, but I do want to build a little bit. So I do think to some degree, yes, we end up going to places that have tea that we respect and enjoy. I think we're also kind of hitting the big ones to start. These are the things that we knew we wanted to write about. These are the things we knew we wanted to learn more about. I don't think it's specifically that we're like just drinking a ton of Yiwu tea. But as to what you addressed in the beginning, Jason, it's like Yiwu is the place to begin if we want to continue learning about pu'er tea. It would be hard to go to some of these places and not be a drinker of that kind of tea. What are you doing? I don't know.
Pat, we were talking about this identification. I have two questions on this. What have you done to prepare for this trip, for tasting tea, for researching tea? Have you reread things, that kind of thing? And where do you think that your identification skills are going to be challenged on this trip?
So you don't mean preparing like all of my REI shopping. You don't want that.
You can talk about that more, but I think everyone's more interested in what brand of pants did you buy?
None of them fit me, dude. My thighs are way too thick. I tried on so many things at REI. On the preparing side, so the past 2 years that we've been going into these trips, I have been doing a lot of reading. I've been going back over my notes. I've been referencing some of kind of the standard books that we all have read in the past. And this is the first one where actually I'm trying to really go in with a blank slate. So I haven't been doing too much research to prepare for the trip. Tasting wise, I have been drinking a shit ton of pu'er. So I have been going through a lot of my single origin samples and just trying to solidify my flavor memory around some of them. I wouldn't say I have enough of any single village tea to say that, oh, I've got enough data points to know, but at least trying to give myself a frame of reference before we go into the mountains. So that's been definitely an area where I've been focused on preparation. On the knowledge side, I'm just hoping to have it all dropped on me like bricks. And if I go, oh yeah, I remember that, then that's great. But I don't intend to come in super sharp like, oh, this is what I read. I'd rather hear it directly from them.
And when we get tested, day one of this trip, we arrive in Yiwu and they lay 5 teas down in front of us and they say, single garden, go.
Then they're gonna send me back to the airport. I think I could do some of it. We'll see.
Is there an area? Do you have some cakes from an area that you think like, all right, this has a specific flavor?
Well, the sample that you sent me, that Wangong from last year or 2 years ago, that's one where I went back and I was just like, okay, I think I can do this. If we go to Wangong or if we're getting tea from that area, I think I can point this one out.
That was something that really impressed me, the Wangong cake, the Wangong area. I've been doing the opposite of Pat. I've been rereading like crazy, going over, of course, my old notes from 2023, but also rereading a bunch of historical documents, historical treatises. So looking at Tang Dynasty era tax policy for Yunnan tea.
Casual.
Tea. Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, Tang Dynasty tea for horse trade, not so bad. They were pretty okay. They went from like 5,000 horses to like 750,000. They did decent.
Yeah, like 5,000 taels of silver.
It gets worse in the song.
But I was saying, I've been rereading tons of stuff, including Tang Dynasty era tax policy, all of that work, and then also looking at early Han migration patterns into Yunnan for tin mining and the collectivization of whether or not things were considered to be part of core central China and why the various bans on mining didn't apply to Yunnan mountain regions, which were seen as hinterlands. So doing that, but also I had some of our contacts put together tasting samples for me so that I could be sure to beat both of you at a blind tasting. So I got a set of different single origin samples, and some of these came in at single garden and one of them came in at a single tree. I don't think I've ever previously knowingly, maybe one, is the honey cake that at least two of us have, is that a single tree? I don't know if that's single tree.
I don't think so. Was it a white package?
Yeah, the pure white unlabeled package, yeah.
Okay, maybe that was because
That's a Hani tribe tea that is definitely Gushu, 100% Gushu, but I don't know if that's single tree. So this might be the only time I've ever tasted single tree pu'er.
interesting. When we were in Yiwu last time, people were telling us that's really rarely made because they think that single tree being frequently a little bit one-dimensional, and they just use it as a reference for their own use.
This isn't pressed into a cake. It's basically matcha.
Oh,
So what Jason
And
is
that's what-
telling us is that he got a bunch of awesome samples to do a bunch of preparation so he can kick our asses. And he did not even let us know that samples was like an option. Kind of rude, honestly.
So Zongjun, what have you done to prepare for this trip? Knowledge, reading, tasting.
yeah, really trying to figure out how we get there with our driver this time and how I can get my German in and out of Yiwu safely.
And we appreciate you for that.
Yeah,
Don't thank
knowledge-wise-
him till it's done, Pat. You have no idea what we went to last time.
Wait, what?
I'm just imagining when we were in Yixing and we went to that random craft beer bar and there was no way for us to get home. I'm imagining that, but like much further in the middle of nowhere.
That would have been like a 3-hour walk. This will be like a 3-day walk.
Like worst case scenario in Yixing last time, it's like a 5-star hotel right next to us. It's
Yeah, not too bad.
yeah, not too bad. Maybe not here in Yiwu, but yeah, really want to trick Jason and sell him across the border to Laos, and my dealer didn't show up. That was a bummer.
I would have
But,
been a great pig butcher.
Yeah, referencing old notes, trying to read some of the books that our scholar friends has written. One of them who have really made the effort to put us into some of our very important contacts in Yiwu. So getting myself more mentally prepared for all of these knowledge dump that I'm about to receive and also need to do simultaneous translation.
Zongjun does do an amazing job, and I don't think we ever show enough appreciation during the trip, but I hope you know before how much we appreciate what you're doing.
It was Yixing teapot, and this time I'm expecting gushu cakes.
There'll be something. There'll be something.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. Is there a good one from Instagram, Pat?
I've got a real chill one. Maybe we can do a real chill one and then we'll finish it off with a more serious one. So here we've got getting to Yunnan must involve a few long trips. What will you be reading or watching in transit?
I'm going to take a book on the societal development of Yunnan. I have the book over there. It's called Between the Clouds, The Creation of Yunnan. So starts like pre-Tang and goes into Qing Dynasty. Just some light reading for an 18-hour plane ride.
The most Jason answer of all time. Zongjun, you've got a shorter trip, but I'm sure you're going to be watching or reading something. Any plans?
I don't know. I'll be there in like 2 hours, so probably just listen to some music. During the car ride, I think it's not really a good time to read anything. Car sick, a serious issue. But I'll make sure to take a lot of photos and really open the window, breathing the mountain breeze, hoping to smell some fragrance of tea miles away from Yiwu. I think that will be something really surreal.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. For me, I was looking at my Libby, my e-library. I've got a couple books of the Mistborn series lined up, so we'll see how much I plow through that. Very opposite to what you were saying, Jason. And then I do still have From Dawn to Decadence, so I plan to get through a little more of that. But otherwise, I'm going to be on a nice 10-hour Delta flight. I might watch a movie or two. I'm pretty partial to Fast and Furious movies when I'm on a plane. It's just that perfect plane movie where you don't really have to care what's happening and you can just kind of zone out and enjoy with your meal. And when you feel like focusing on something more serious, you can turn it off and read or whatever.
So that's funny. I could see why Fast and Furious is a perfect plane movie. You could actually just watch it on mute. They only say one word repeatedly.
Really a perfect movie before a car ride up to Yiwu.
Return to Snakes on a Plane.
I will be watching nothing with snakes. Nothing with snakes. I'm good. I'm sure we'll give them.
That'll really help you prepare you for Yunnan.
I'm sure we will get enough. I'm so sure of that. Okay, maybe our last one then?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you expect this trip will benefit you, and how will it benefit readers and listeners of Tea Technique?
I think I have a pretty short answer to this, is just that these trips are a constant source of inspiration. We've been writing this Yixing book for 2 years now? And I have a lot of fortitude, I think. I don't know if I could keep doing this if these yearly trips weren't happening. I do this because I love it. It's a money-losing enterprise by design, right? Anything that we make, we're just plowing back into finding more information, running experiments, doing commissions, that kind of thing. And I don't know if I would have the constant source of energy and drive and inspiration if I didn't know that these trips, when they happen, they give a bunch of energy. And as they come near, I start to get interested in other forms of research and thinking about other things. And I start reading these books about it. And it really is a very positive feedback loop and a spiral up. Yeah. And readers benefit because I get to talk about it and relay these stories and stuff. So that's, very short answer.
For you, it was, yeah. I'll touch on the energy piece. These experiences, while they can be very tiring and taxing at the moment, often looking back on them, and especially just right after getting back home, I think they definitely give me the boost to get through another year's worth of editing and listening to podcasts and editing chapters, doing research through scientific journals. And even right now, thinking about the trip coming up next week has helped me get about halfway through this week's article. Sorry, Jason, but about halfway through. There's only so many things I think that you do in life that give you energy back. And this is one of those things that continuously, even thinking about like our trip from 2 years ago, can still give me the fire to get through a lot of other things.
Yeah, same here. And really the expectation to spend more time with you guys in person and doing something together that we are all interested in. I think this is something really magical. And for the audience, you can learn all about the bromance after our trip and with some sprinkles of knowledge, hopefully, in between.
The Chaozhou Bros go to Yiwu. That's this chapter of the book. And become Yiwu Bros, question mark?
I hope so.
Okay. Well, any last words anyone wants to add?
Gushu Bros.
Gushu Bros. Jason, I'll pass it off to you then for the usual closing.
Thank you, everyone. This has been Tea Technique Editorial Conversations. We hope you join us again next time. We're going to finish up publishing the Yixing book, hopefully this year, and we're going to start working on this pu'er book. Thank you all so much.